I never imagined I'd be the one to take down Karen Matthews, the infamous Homeowners Association president of Whispering Pines. For 3 years, she'd reigned over our neighborhood with an iron fist, clipboard in hand, measuring grass height to the quarter inch, and sending violation notices if your mailbox was even a shade darker than the approved eggshell number 7. But even I couldn't have predicted how far she'd go or how spectacularly she'd fall. It all started when my sister and her family moved in temporarily while their house was being renovated. My 11-year-old nephew Ethan has cerebral palsy and uses a wheelchair. He's the brightest, most determined kid you'll ever meet. The first day they arrived, we installed a small, removable aluminum ramp over the 2 steps leading to my front door. Nothing permanent, nothing intrusive, just a practical solution so Ethan could come and go independently. The doorbell rang at 7:30 the next morning. There stood Karen, her platinum blonde bob perfectly styled despite the early hour, designer sunglasses perched on her head, and that infamous clipboard clutched to her chest. "Good morning," she said with a tight smile that never reached her eyes. "I noticed you've made an unauthorized modification to your property." I blinked, still half asleep. "Excuse me." "The ramp," she said, pointing with a French manicured finger. "It's not on the approved structures list for front entrances. Article 7, Section 12 of the HOA bylaws clearly states that all exterior modifications must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee. I'll need you to remove it immediately." I took a deep breath. "Karen, it's a temporary ramp for my nephew, who uses a wheelchair. He's staying with me for a few weeks." She consulted her clipboard. "I don't see any approved accommodation requests in your file. You'll need to submit Form 34B with architectural drawings, material samples, and a physician's statement. The committee meets on the first Tuesday of next month." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My nephew needs to be able to enter and exit my house now, not in a month. This is a reasonable accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Karen's eyes narrowed. The HOA predates ADA requirements, and our bylaws take precedence. You have 48 hours to remove the unauthorized structure, or you'll be fined $50 per day. She spun on her heel and marched down my walkway, leaving me speechless in the doorway. I spent the day researching. Turns out, Karen was dead wrong. The ADA absolutely applied to HOAs, regardless of when they were established. I printed out the relevant legal documents and dropped them in her mailbox with a polite note explaining that the ramp would stay until my nephew left, and that I'd be happy to discuss it further if she had concerns. The next day, I came home from work to find a violation notice taped to my door with a $200 fine for nuisance correspondence in a non-approved mailbox receptacle. Apparently, placing documents in Karen's mailbox violated another bylaw. I had to laugh at the absurdity, but my amusement was short-lived. The following Saturday morning, I was making breakfast when Ethan wheeled into the kitchen, tears streaming down his face. "Uncle James, someone took my ramp," he said, his voice shaking. "I can't get outside to play with the other kids." I rushed to the front door. The ramp was gone. Not just moved, completely gone. Through the window, I could see neighborhood kids playing street hockey. Ethan had been looking forward to watching them all week. My blood boiled. I knew exactly who was responsible. I carried Ethan down the steps and set him up in a spot where he could watch the game, then marched straight to Karen's house. Her pristine white colonial, with its perfectly manicured hedges, sat at the end of the cul-de-sac like a fortress. I rang the doorbell 3 times before she answered, wearing a tennis outfit, though I'd never once seen her play. "Where's the ramp?" I demanded, skipping any pretense of pleasantries. Karen crossed her arms. "I had it removed as per Section 23 of the bylaws regarding unauthorized structures and HOA remediation rights. You were given notice. That ramp is my property. You stole it. Where is it?" I was struggling to keep my voice level. She sighed dramatically, as if I were a troublesome child. "The non-compliant item has been disposed of. If you continue with this hostile attitude, I'll have to report you for creating a disruptive environment, which carries a $500 fine." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Karen, that ramp cost over $800. More importantly, my disabled nephew now can't leave the house without being carried. That's not just mean, it's illegal. I'm simply enforcing the bylaws you agreed to when you moved here," she said with a smug smile. "Perhaps next time you'll follow proper channels before making unauthorized changes to the exterior aesthetic of our community." I took a step back, realizing I needed to handle this differently. You know what? You're right. I should have followed proper channels. And now I will. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of her smile for evidence. Her smug expression faltered. What do you think you're doing? Documenting the person who committed theft and violated federal disability law. The police will appreciate having a clear image. I turned and walked away. I walked away as Karen sputtered behind me, shouting, "You can't prove anything. The police don't care about HOA issues." But I wasn't heading to the local police station. Not yet. I went straight home and called a lawyer who specialized in ADA compliance. After I explained the situation, he couldn't hide his excitement. "This is an open and shut case," he said. "Destruction of medical equipment, willful ADA violation, theft of property worth over $500. She's in serious trouble." The next Monday, I took the day off. At exactly 9 a.m., two things happened at once. Karen received a certified letter from my attorney detailing the federal laws she had broken, and I filed a formal police report about the theft and destruction of my medical equipment. By noon, 3 other families had stepped forward with their own stories about Karen's discriminatory enforcement of HOA rules against residents with disabilities or medical needs. In response, Karen called an emergency HOA meeting that evening. I attended, along with almost every homeowner in the neighborhood, a sharp contrast to the usual empty meetings where Karen and her 2 cronies made decisions without opposition. Karen stood at the podium, red-faced and clutching a pile of bylaws. "We have a resident trying to bypass our rules," she began, glaring at me. "If we allow one unauthorized ramp, next thing you know, people will be painting their houses purple and parking commercial vehicles in their driveways." I waited for her to finish, then raised my hand. When she reluctantly nodded, I stood up. "I need to address the board regarding the theft and destruction of medical equipment from my property, which is a federal crime." Karen's face shifted from red to purple. "That's a lie. The HOA has remediation rights," she snapped. I held up my phone. "I have security footage showing you and the HOA maintenance person removing the ramp at 6:15 a.m. on Saturday." I didn't actually have the footage, but the maintenance person's expression spoke volumes. "I also have the receipt for the ramp, ADA documentation proving its necessity, and statements from 3 medical professionals regarding the impact of its removal on my nephew's ability to meet basic needs." The room fell silent. Karen looked around, but no one was supporting her. Even her loyal board members suddenly found the floor fascinating. "Furthermore," I continued, "I've spoken to the district attorney's office about pressing charges for theft, destruction of medical equipment, conspiracy to violate civil rights, and violations of the Fair Housing Act." A woman in the back stood up. "My son has autism, and Karen fined me for having a swing in my backyard that helps with his sensory needs. She called it an unsightly play structure." An elderly man raised his hand. "She made me remove the handrail I installed next to my garden steps after my hip replacement." One by one, neighbors shared stories of Karen's abusive behavior, each more shocking than the last. Karen tried several times to restore order, but it was too late. No one was listening anymore. The maintenance person, pale and trembling, approached the microphone. "For the record," he said, "Ms. Matthews told me to take the ramp to the landfill, specifically so it couldn't be recovered." He turned to me. "I didn't know it was for a disabled child. She told me it was abandoned junk someone had dumped." 2 days later, I was installing a new, sturdier ramp when a police car pulled up. 2 officers approached Karen's house and knocked on the door. I couldn't hear what they said, but I watched as they led her to the patrol car. She wasn't in handcuffs, but she was clearly under direction. The neighbors watched in stunned silence as the Queen of Whispering Pines was dethroned. Later that day, I received a call from the district attorney's office. Karen had been charged with theft, destruction of medical equipment, and multiple ADA violations. Because she had abused her position as HOA president, the charges were enhanced. She was facing up to 3 years in prison and over $100,000 in fines. The DA offered a plea deal: 6 months of house arrest, 5 years of probation, full restitution for the ramp, plus damages, 200 hours of community service with disabled individuals, and a permanent ban from serving on any HOA board. That evening, as I helped Ethan up our new ramp, we saw Karen pulling into her driveway. Her perfect hair was disheveled, and her designer outfit had been replaced by a rumpled pantsuit. When she saw us watching, her face twisted with rage and humiliation. She slammed her car door and stormed inside, only to emerge a moment later with a for sale sign, which she jabbed into her manicured lawn with such force I thought she might break it. As our eyes met across the street, I saw something I never expected: fear. Karen Matthews, who had terrorized our neighborhood with petty power and arbitrary rules, had finally realized that real laws apply to her too, and she was terrified.